Music can bring people together, but sometimes it tears them apart. From creative differences to personal feuds, these legendary bandmates prove that making great music doesn't always mean getting along. Where today we're diving deep into the world of musical feuds and fractured friendships. We're counting down our picks for the top 20 bandmates who couldn't stand being in the same room together. Whether they've buried the hatchet or are still at each other's throats, these musicians have earned their place in the Hall of Infamous Rivalries. 1. Van Halen's Internal Warfare. Coming in at number 20, we have Eddie Van Halen versus, well, practically everyone except his brother, Alex. The band's name might as well have been a warning sign of the power dynamics to come. Eddie's relationship with original frontman David Lee Roth was particularly explosive, with their personalities clashing like oil and water. Roth's flamboyant, larger-than-life persona consistently grated against Eddie's more serious approach to music, a situation that wasn't helped by Eddie's ongoing battles with substance abuse. But the drama didn't stop there. Eddie's sharp tongue found other targets, including bassist Michael Anthony, whom he publicly dismissed as a garbage bass player, a harsh assessment that sent shockwaves through the rock community. Even Sammy Hagar, Roth's celebrated replacement, couldn't escape the tension. After years of creative and managerial disputes, Hagar's departure in the late 90s turned particularly bitter, with both sides trading barbs through the media. As Hagar later recalled, "We cried, we hugged, then 2 weeks later, I'm reading in Rolling Stone what a horrible person I am." These conflicts paint a vivid picture of how even the most successful bands can become battlegrounds of ego, creativity, and control. Van Halen's story serves as a perfect opening chapter in our exploration of rock's most notorious internal feuds, demonstrating that sometimes the biggest fights happen not on stage, but behind the scenes. 2. The Monkees' America's Manufactured Meltdown. While I'm a Believer and Daydream Believer remain timeless classics, the Monkees carried a heavy burden as America's answer to the Beatles. Created for television, they followed the Fab Four's blueprint almost step by step. From their mop-top haircuts to their attempt at cinematic success with their experimental film Head. But living in the shadow of greatness took its toll on the band's dynamics. Behind their cheerful on-screen personas, tension simmered like a powder keg ready to explode. The pressure of maintaining their manufactured image while struggling for artistic credibility created deep rifts within the group. Most notably, Peter Tork's frustration reached such heights that he made what might be the most expensive exit in 1960s pop music, buying out his own contract for a sum that would equal roughly $5 million today. Talk about wanting out. 3. Kings of Leon, Blood Isn't Always Thicker Than Water. The story of Kings of Leon proves that family bonds can be both a blessing and a curse in the music industry. The band, comprised of brothers Caleb, Nathan, and Jared Followill, along with their cousin Matthew, rocketed to global stardom with hits like Sex on Fire and Use Somebody. But beneath the surface of their success, a storm was brewing. The relationship between frontman Caleb and bassist Jared became particularly volatile, with Caleb's struggle with alcohol acting as the catalyst. Jared's frustration with his brother's unprofessional behavior and apparent lack of commitment to the band created a rift that threatened to tear the group apart. Meanwhile, Caleb resented his brother's public criticism and perceived lack of support during his darkest moments. Fortunately, this family feud has a happy ending. Caleb's decision to get sober helped mend the brotherly bonds. 4. The Pixies, Creative Control and Chaos. The Pixies' internal dynamics resembled less of a democratic band and more of a dictatorship under Black Francis. As the primary songwriter and creative force, Francis wielded his power with an iron fist, much to the frustration of bassist Kim Deal. Her attempts to contribute creatively were consistently shut down, creating an environment of mounting tension and resentment. The situation reached several breaking points during their relentless touring schedule. In one particularly infamous incident, Francis hurled his guitar at Dio during a performance, a physical manifestation of their deteriorating relationship. Dio's response? She simply refused to play at another show, demonstrating her own form of rebellion. The powder keg finally exploded in 1993 when Francis abruptly dissolved the band, ending one of alternative rock's most creatively fruitful yet personally tumultuous partnerships. 5. Metallica, the permanent new guy.
No, nothing else matters.
Jason Newsted's story in Metallica is a stark reminder that sometimes, no matter how long you stay, you can never truly replace a legend. Despite his 15-year tenure as the band's bassist, Newsted lived in the shadow of his predecessor, Cliff Burton, who tragically lost his life in a tour bus accident in Sweden in 1986. The ghost of Burton's legacy, combined with Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield's tight-knit relationship, created an insurmountable barrier that would ultimately define Newsted's experience with the band. 6. Metallica's bass drama, The Newsted Chronicles.
And I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven or this could be hell.
When Jason Newsted joined Metallica, he couldn't have imagined the uphill battle that awaited him. The band's treatment of their new bassist became apparent with the release of And Justice for All, where his bass tracks were infamously buried in the mix. While Newsted initially attributed this to traditional band hazing from Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield, the duo would later criticize his playing abilities as the real reason. This set a precedent for his entire 15-year tenure with the metal giants. Despite his commitment and longevity, Newsted never managed to break through the invisible wall that separated him from the band's inner circle. The final straw came during a heated disagreement with Hetfield over Newsted's side project, Echo Brain. As Newsted later reflected in a candid interview, "I knew that was my last performance with Metallica. The writing was on the wall, written in blood and steel." 7. The Eagles, Paradise Lost. When you think of the Eagles, you might imagine harmony, both musical and personal. After all, how could a band with 2 of the 3 best-selling albums in American history be anything but perfectly in sync? Their greatest hits, 1,971 to 1,975 inches, holds the crown with a staggering 38 million copies sold, while Hotel California sits comfortably in third place with 26 million units, sandwiching Michael Jackson's Thriller between them. However, behind the pristine vocal harmonies and perfectly crafted melodies lay a powder keg of ego clashes and bitter rivalries. The band's internal strife reached its first breaking point when bassist Randy Meisner departed following a physical altercation with Glenn Frey. But it was the infamous Long Night at Long Beach on July 31st, 1980, that would become the band's point of no return. That evening, a visibly exhausted Meisner, who had reportedly been partying all night with some female fans and a bottle of vodka, refused to perform. The tension escalated as Glenn Frey and Don Felder engaged in an onstage verbal warfare, each threatening to inflict physical harm on the other between songs. Their venomous exchanges, picked up by their vocal mics, painted a vivid picture of a band imploding in real time. In this explosive night marked the end of the Eagles' first chapter, leading to a 14-year hiatus that would only end in 1994. As Don Henley would later quip, "We went from take it easy to take it to the limit to take a hike." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. One of music's most commercially successful acts had become a cautionary tale about how success and harmony don't always go hand in hand. 8. Aerosmith's Toxic Twins. The dynamic between Steven Tyler and Joe Perry of Aerosmith reads like a rock and roll soap opera. Dubbed the Toxic Twins for their notorious drug use and volatile relationship, these songwriting partners have spent nearly 5 decades alternating between creating musical magic and nearly destroying each other. Their partnership, much like a turbulent marriage, has weathered countless storms, breakups, and reconciliations. During Aerosmith's early years, substance abuse cast a dark shadow over their creative process. The situation became so dire that Tyler and Perry often couldn't even record in the same room, forcing them to lay down their parts separately. The tension reached its breaking point in 1979 when Perry stormed out during the recording of Night in the Ruts, a title that seemed eerily prophetic of their circumstances. 9. Journey's lonely frontman. Steve Perry's story with Journey illustrates how success doesn't always translate to acceptance. Despite being the voice behind some of rock's most iconic anthems, Perry felt like an outsider from day one. Joining the band in 1977, 3 albums into their career, he brought a dramatic shift to Journey's sound, steering them away from their progressive rock roots toward a more mainstream direction that didn't sit well with everyone. The isolation Perry felt was palpable, as he later revealed in a heart-wrenching VH1 Behind the Music interview, "I really always felt that I was the outside guy." This sense of alienation, coupled with mounting personal problems and creative differences, eventually led to his departure and subsequent retreat from the public eye in the late 1980s. 10. Blink-182's UFO Hunter. Tom DeLonge's journey with Blink-182 showcases how success can sometimes feel like a prison. The pop-punk icon's first departure in the mid-2000s stemmed from his growing disillusionment with the demanding tour schedule and its impact on his family life. When he returned, new tensions arose, particularly regarding his side project Angels and Airwaves and his increasing interest in UFO research, a passion that often drew mockery from his bandmates. The 2015 split seemed final, but in true rock and roll fashion, 2023 saw an unexpected reunion tour that proved enormously successful. It's a testament to how time can heal even the deepest wounds in the music industry. 11. The Beach Boys' Family Feud. The relationship between cousins Mike Love and Brian Wilson represents one of music's most tragic family feuds. Despite creating the groundbreaking Pet Sounds and pioneering surf rock together, their creative vision couldn't have been more different. Love's self-proclaimed role as Brian's Antichrist wasn't just colorful rhetoric. It manifested in numerous lawsuits over songwriting credits and defamation. The tension reached its peak during the band's 50th anniversary tour when Love, who owns the Beach Boys brand, abruptly ended the reunion lineup and continued touring with hired musicians. This decision effectively drove the final wedge between the cousins, proving that sometimes blood ties aren't enough to keep a band together. 12. The Rolling Stones' Glimmer Twins rivalry. The Rolling Stones might be rock's greatest survivors, but the relationship between Mick Jagger and Keith Richards has been anything but smooth sailing. Like an old married couple, these Glimmer Twins have spent decades alternating between creative brilliance and bitter feuding. Their partnership, often described as familial, follows the classic pattern of sibling rivalry, complete with explosive arguments, cold shoulders, and eventual reconciliations. The mid-1980s marked a particularly turbulent chapter in their story. Following the lukewarm reception of their album Dirty Work, tensions reached a boiling point. Jagger's reluctance to promote the album and his growing preoccupation with his solo career created a rift that threatened to tear the band apart. Richards, feeling abandoned and betrayed, would shout and scream at his longtime partner, later describing Jagger as unbearable in his autobiography Life. Yet somehow, like the band's iconic logo, their lips kept moving and the music kept flowing. Despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, Jagger and Richards continued to create some of rock's most enduring anthems. As Richards once quipped, "Mick and I are like brothers. We fight, but we're still brothers." 13. The Kinks' brotherly discord.
Girl, I want to be with you all of the time of day and all of the night.
If the Davies brothers of the Kinks were characters in a novel, their relationship would be a masterclass in sibling rivalry. Ray and Dave Davies' antagonistic dynamic predated their musical success, stretching back to their childhood years. Dave's scathing assessment that Ray has only been happy for 3 years of his life, those were the 3 before I was born, perfectly encapsulates their fractured relationship. Their conflicts often turned physical, with one particularly infamous incident resulting in Dave receiving 18 stitches after a heated argument. Yet somehow, this combustible combination produced some of British rock's most influential music. Ray's songwriting genius paired with Dave's innovative guitar work created classics like You Really Got Me and Lola, even as they struggled to share the same stage. The brothers' relationship remained Arctic cold throughout their career, with creative differences, personal grievances, and competing egos fueling their ongoing feud. Despite numerous attempts at reconciliation, their relationship proves that sometimes the closest family ties can become the most frayed. As Dave later reflected, the music was the only thing that kept us together. When we weren't playing, we were at war. These brothers exemplify how family dynamics in bands can be both a blessing and a curse, creating unforgettable music while simultaneously testing the limits of familial bonds. Their story serves as a reminder that sometimes the price of artistic greatness is personal harmony. 14. The Davies Dynasty, when brotherhood turns bitter.
Making music together, whether or not it's making records with the band. We're planning a record sometime next year.
The Kinks' story stands as a testament to how family ties can both create and destroy. After years of legendary performances and chart-topping hits, the band finally dissolved in 1996. Despite persistent reunion rumors that have circulated for decades, drummer Mick Avery delivered the final verdict in 2023, confirming that the Davies brothers simply couldn't reconcile their differences. Their story remains a cautionary tale of how even the strongest family bonds can crack under the pressure of fame. 15. Kiss a House Divided. When it comes to band feuds, Kiss presents a perfect example of a group split right down the middle. As one of the most controversial and successful rock bands of the 1970s, their elaborate stage shows and electrifying performances masked deep-seated tensions within the group. The original lineup fractured when Peter Criss was dismissed in 1980, followed shortly by Ace Frehley's departure. Both exits stemming from creative differences and feelings of being sidelined in crucial band decisions. While a 1995 reunion briefly rekindled hope for fans, it proved to be short-lived. Both Ace and Peter eventually departed again, leaving their relationship with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley in tatters. Even more telling, recent reports suggest that even Simmons and Stanley's once solid partnership has begun showing cracks. As Simmons famously quipped during their heyday, "Any idiot can get a woman when they're on tour, but this is a lot more important." 16. The Ramones, punk's dysfunctional family. The Ramones, pioneers of punk rock, created their own unique family dynamic by having each member adopt the surname Ramone. However, the artificial brotherhood between Joey and Johnny Ramone couldn't prevent their relationship from deteriorating into one of rock's most bitter feuds. Their constant bickering over everything from politics to musical direction created an increasingly toxic environment. The situation reached a point of no return when Joey's girlfriend, Linda Danielle, left him for Johnny, a betrayal that permanently poisoned their relationship. Despite continuing to perform together, the two never reconciled their differences. Tragically, when Joey succumbed to cancer in 2001, Johnny reportedly didn't even make a final phone call to his former bandmate, leaving their feud unresolved until the end. 17. Fleetwood Mac, Love, and Other Catastrophes.
You could be my silver spring.
The Fleetwood Mac saga reads like a soap opera set to music. Before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined the band, 6 members had already come and gone, setting the stage for what would become one of rock's most turbulent stories. The recording of their masterpiece Rumors became legendary not just for its music, but for the personal chaos that surrounded it. Band members barely spoke to each other outside the studio, their personal relationships crumbling even as they created some of rock's most enduring hits. The tension finally boiled over in 1987 after Tango in the Night. Buckingham quit following a physical altercation with Nicks, and she soon followed suit during a heated argument with Mick Fleetwood. As Stevie Nicks later reflected, "We were still young enough then that destiny could have taken us another way." Despite their eventual reunions, the band's history remains a testament to how personal relationships can both fuel and destroy creative partnerships. 18. The Smashing Pumpkins' Perfect Storm. The tale of the Smashing Pumpkins illustrates how creative control can fracture even the strongest musical partnerships. Darcy Retzky's relationship with Billy Corgan deteriorated during the recording of Siamese Dream when Corgan, notorious for his perfectionism, took over her bass duties. This creative slight planted seeds of resentment that would grow into a full-blown feud spanning decades. James Iha's story with the band follows a similar pattern of discord. While he eventually rejoined the Pumpkins in 2018, his absence from their initial reunion in the late 2000s spoke volumes about the fractured relationships within the group. Corgan's public criticisms of both former members only deepened these wounds, turning what was once alternative rock's dream team into a cautionary tale of ego and control. 19. Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Relations.
Now the years are rolling by me, they are rocking evenly.
Few musical partnerships have produced such beautiful harmony while harboring such deep discord as Simon and Garfunkel. Their relationship, spanning back to their preteen years, has been marked by constant tension and creative rivalry. The recording of their masterpiece, Bridge Over Troubled Water, became the breaking point, with both artists barely able to maintain their professional facade. The aftermath of their initial split revealed the depth of their mutual antipathy. Despite occasional reunions that teased fans with the possibility of reconciliation, their fundamental inability to coexist professionally remained unchanged. When Paul Simon was approached about a potential reunion in 2016, his response was characteristically blunt. Touring with Garfunkel wasn't just undesirable, it was simply impossible. 20. Pink Floyd's Power Struggle.
No dark sarcasm in the classroom.
Pink Floyd's journey from psychedelic pioneers to stadium-filling titans came at a steep personal cost. Roger Waters' increasing creative control, particularly during the band's commercial peak with The Dark Side of the Moon, created an unsustainable power dynamic. His position as principal lyricist and songwriter entitled him to the lion's share of royalties, a situation that bred resentment among his bandmates. The tension eventually claimed Richard Wright as its first casualty, with Waters engineering his dismissal. The bassist's relationship with David Gilmour and Nick Mason also deteriorated beyond repair, leading to Waters' own departure and years of legal battles over the band's name and legacy. These legendary feuds remind us that behind every perfect harmony often lies discord, behind every hit album lies conflict, and behind every successful band lies complicated human relationships that sometimes crumble under the weight of fame and creativity. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own favorite band feud stories in the comments below.